Now, we're going to start working with routing policies. Right now you have the two SIP phones, right? Being able to communicate using SIP registry routing. What we're going to do now is we're going to have an H223 phone registered to CM, and we want to make calls from the SIP phone to the H223 phone. You now know that that's going to happen via network routing policies, because that phone doesn't have a user profile in Session Manager. Instead, it has a profile in CM. So SIP routing design overview. What it says here, network routing policies determines how all calls except internal SIP phone to SIP phone calls are routed. Lots of planning, lots of planning according to this. And it's actually not that hard, but let me cover those slides. So a lot of questions, let's say, need to be answered before you configure routing. Like here, what are the SIP domains, or what's the SIP domain? Maybe you have multiple domains managed by your session manager, maybe not, maybe just one. What SIP entities exist? Do you have already all of the applications that are going to be involved in that routing defined as SIP entities? Remember that a SIP entity is just an application that wants to communicate directly with your session manager. So in this case, if you have this session manager, CM and the SBC, CM and the SBC needs to be defined in session manager as SIP entities, because they want to talk directly or communicate directly with session manager. How many digits is the entity expecting? Maybe you need to modify, remove digits, or add digits. What are the extension ranges, or then is digits expected by CM if this SIP entity is CM? What type of endpoint is placed in the call? An H223 phone, SIP phone, digital, analog? It makes it look like it's complicated, but it's actually not that complicated. When? Another question. When are you trying to route? Well, you could route based on time and based on the date. So there's that kind of routing. Where? Where is the SIP entity located? How many locations are there? Are you trying to do some location-based routing? Maybe, maybe not. But you have the ability to allow some locations from using the routing policy, and some other locations just deny the routing policy. How? Do you need to adapt the message, the SIP request? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you're trying to communicate with a third-party application, and you do need to adapt the message. Maybe it's not a third-party application, maybe it's an Avaya application, but maybe you need to insert or delete digits. Notice that they're saying here, what digits do I need to insert or delete to normalize the dial pattern? Your carrier is probably going to expect the dial number and also the dialing number, but then both Dennis and Annie to be expressed in the E.164 format. You're familiar with that one? That's a format that starts with a plus sign, country code, area code, and then some digits, right? So at some point you need to normalize that number. It could be right after leave CM. You could normalize that number here, right? After you leave CM, you could normalize it here in session manager as an incoming adaptation. You could normalize that here, session manager as an outgoing adaptation. You could even normalize it here in the SBC. So, and again, normalizing the number is just converting that number to now be expressed in the E.164 format, which again is a plus sign at the beginning, country code, area code, and then the number. Normally people normalize the number either here or here. You know, right after CM made the routing decision, which is in the route pattern of CM, you could insert or remove digits, right, in the route pattern, remember? And that's a post-routing decision, because at that time the routing decision is made. Where could you insert or remove digits in CM pre-routing?
Public unknown.
That would allow you to, that doesn't allow you to insert or remove. That allows you to actually just
change the caller ID.
Yeah.
That'd be the caller ID.
That would be the caller ID. The place
But
would be the
ARS.
digit conversion table for either AR or ARS.
Yeah.
That's pre-routing. At that point, the routing decision hasn't been taken.
Correct. Right.
So normally people do it here post-routing in CM in the route pattern, or it could be done here in Session Manager as an incoming adaptation. That's another place where you could normalize the number. We'll talk about adaptations later today. So you get to, so you know, you get to know how to apply adaptations in Session Manager, how to normalize numbers. Okay, so pretty much, yeah, a lot of things to consider, but actually it's not that hard to configure net routing policies. Let's see, quick review. Routing design requires the following.
Definitely not A. Why would you ever ask the customer? Thanks for laughing. I'm what? I'm fired? Huh? What?
Route yourself to HR.
Probably all of them. Well, I'm not sure about license keys.
Yeah, I don't think license keys.
Yeah, everything but D. Now, routing components. So this slide actually comes from back in the day, you know, it's been there since release probably 5.2. And it has those numbers on top of the, what's the name of this? Bins,
Inbox.
yeah.
Bins.
Because the number tells you what thing needs to be configured first. So for you to configure a network routing policy, you need to specify the destination zip entity, the time range where you want the policy to be active, the dial pattern that's going to be associated to the policy, and or a regular expression. So even though there are only 4 things you need to configure, the 4 things you see here, even though there are only 4 things, those things are so interconnected with other things that you actually end up having to configure all of the stuff that you see on top. And the number that you see on top of each bin is the order of configuration. So you first need to configure a zip domain, right? Then what? Locations, then adaptations, then zip entities, then entity links, then time ranges, then dial pattern. Avaya got smarter with release 6.0, and now you don't need to remember all that. All you need to do is go to routing and start from top to bottom. You know, so you just go and check your domains. Do you have all of the domains that you need? Maybe yes, maybe not. Locations, do you have all of your locations? All the locations you need? Maybe, maybe not. Adaptations, do you need to create adaptations? Maybe. Maybe you're trying to modify the dial number, or maybe the caller ID. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you're trying to send this to a third-party application, so you need to apply some sort of adaptation. Then zip entities, then entity links. You see, so you just follow the order that you see in this slide, and you don't have to remember it. So that's why I was saying that this slide comes from back in the day where we needed to remember that order. Let me go to full screen. So first zip domains, then locations. Remember that locations allow you to specify an IP address range for each location. And it's because later you're able to allow locations to use the routing policy or deny locations from using the routing policy. Everything is domain-based routing. Remember, no matter if it's zip registry routing or network routing policies, everything here is domain-based routing. And also, I think this slide was in another chapter. Remember that the ports that session manager right now has as listening ports need to be the same ports that you configure in the phone when you register. Otherwise, the phone will never register with session manager. Okay, locations allow you to associate the location with an IP address pattern. Let me just move on. Adaptations allow you to modify or normalize digits. And also they allow you to modify zip headers. I'll talk about adaptations with another chapter later. And we will have an exercise. Zip entities and entity links. Remember that everything that communicates with session manager directly needs to be defined as a zip entity. Not the endpoints. The endpoints, if it's a zip endpoint, it registers with session manager. So it doesn't need to be defined as a zip entity. If it's an HTTP digital analog endpoint, it never communicates with session manager directly. It does it through CM. So it doesn't need to be defined as a zip entity either. Entity links, as we'll see in a few minutes, allow you to define the port and protocol for the communication between session manager and the zip entity.
Okay, what was it again? The links?
The entity links allow you to configure a port and a protocol for the communication between session manager and the zip entities. Time ranges allow you to specify a time range where you want the routing policy to be active. You know, so you could say, hey, this time range, which could be working hours, right? I want to route to a specific place, and then over the weekend, I want to route to a different place. So you would use time ranges for that purpose. Dial patterns, that's pretty much a pattern that's going to match with the dial number. And if it matches, a routing policy is going to be associated to it. So take a look at this. It says session manager looks at the digit dial, at the dial number, and that's a dial pattern match. And if it finds a match, then it uses the routing policy associated with that dial pattern.
Do adaptations always take effect prior to dial patterns?
No. Here in session manager, we also have an adaptation that takes effect before. That would be pre-routing, and adaptation that would be after dial patterns, that would be post-routing. Just as in CM, you have a way to adapt before the routing decision is made and after the routing decision is made. Quick review. Let's see if you have a good memory, because this is I don't like these questions, Which group of network elements is required to build routing policies?
Entity.
So would you go with group A or group B?
Okay.
A.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the questions where they try to play with words like zip endpoint links instead of zip entity links. I hate those questions. It's like, who cares? Who cares about that? If you're able to configure this stuff and know how it works, especially when you go to a certification exam and they ask you these kind of stupid questions, and they get you. They get you like, okay.
They confuse you.
Yeah. Okay, again, this is what we're going to be doing in the first lab exercise for routing. Calling from the zip phone to the H223 phone. Now the H223 phone should be able to call the zip phone without routing in session manager, right? Because the destination would have a user profile. All you need to make sure for the H223 phone to call the zip phone is that CM is able to route to session manager. From there, session manager should be able to route to the zip phone, right? Maybe you want to try that when you do the lab.